Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Seaview Cottage Conspiracy, a 1920s Lady Jane and Mrs. Forbes mystery. By B.D. Churston. Narrated by Julia Anthony. 1. June 1928. On a stormy Tuesday morning in Sandham-on-Sea, Kate Forbes and Lady Jane Scott hurried into the sparsely populated promenade tea-rooms. "Phew!" gasped Kate. "One more gust and we'd have been blown to France." "Lady Jane!" exclaimed Winnie Harris, the owner, from behind the counter. "How are you? It's been ages." Ages? Kate put her handbag down to shake off her umbrella. It had only been 4 months since Jane's last visit. Then again, news from afar was oxygen to the locals. "I'm fine, thanks, Mrs. Harris," said Jane, as she tucked a wayward strand of auburn hair behind her ears. "I trust you're well?" "Yes, very well, thank you." "I love the new decor." Jane was indicating the fresh sunrise yellow walls and the giant potted aspidistra, now filling a previously barren corner of the spacious seafront premises. With warm brown eyes and a kindly face, this intelligent 26-year-old was happy to chat about almost anything. Indeed, she looked set to say more. But Winnie's sister Enid Turpin came bustling in from the gale with a flushed face and an inside-out umbrella. "Oh, what a to-do!" "Yes, shocking weather," said Kate. "Yes, but the to-do isn't the weather. My neighbour's gone missing." "Missing? Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure." Enid wedged the useless brolly under her arm and removed her hat. "It's Norman West. He wasn't at home last night. I've asked the other neighbours, but no one's seen or heard anything." "Have you tried the police?" asked Jane. "Yes, old Grumpy says he's not interested." "Oh, right." While Jane smiled sympathetically, Kate felt it was disrespectful to refer to Sergeant Jones in this way, even if it was often justified. But Enid wasn't finished. "He says it's a free country, and people are at liberty to go off as they please." "You mean he can't be bothered," said Winnie. Kate knew Norman West quite well. For one thing, they were Friday afternoon library regulars. Indeed, last Friday, they chatted about knee pain while he changed a Wilkie Collins and a Conan Doyle for a couple of Dorothy L. Sayers. "I'm sure he'll turn up," she said, although Enid had already disappeared into the small staff room behind the counter, where she would swap her drenched coat for an apron. "Did you drive all the way from London?" Winnie asked Jane. "No, I came down by train. I'm staying till Saturday." "You poor girl. You're either up to your eyeballs in dusty old parchments or knee-deep in a muddy hole. There's more to life, you know. You must tell us all your plans." "Let's have our coffee first," said Kate, bringing Winnie's fishing expedition to a halt. She winked at her niece. No doubt Winnie would have quickly shunted them away from Jane's historical and archaeological pursuits onto her cancelled engagement to a viscount. The resulting absence of a glorious summer wedding hadn't been forgotten, while there would be much pondering over the true ideal match for the daughter of the Earl of Oxley. Removing their raincoats, Kate and Jane took a table by the window. Here Kate wiggled her arms. Pleased to be down to just a cream day dress and light green cardigan, Jane also looked relieved to be down to a sleeveless, pale blue, daisy-patterned summer dress. Kate peered out into the gloom. "It won't last," said Jane, pulling a tissue from her shoulder bag to mop her brow. Kate smiled. "I was thinking of the holiday makers. Poor things." "They should go to Brighton," said staunch curmudgeon Ernie Melton, an elderly gentleman in an ancient suit. He was sitting alone in the corner by the aspidistra with a cup of tea and a sticky bun. "Lots more to do there," "Thank you, Mr. Melton," said Kate, "but we have plenty on offer here." "I say it as I see it," he said, before taking a slurp of tea. "When my Ethel was alive, she respected my opinion. Nobody else does." Kate supposed the Regal, Sandham's only picture house, would be busy. Then there was the Alhambra Theatre, although that was becoming less popular thanks to the ever-growing demand for moving pictures. But Ernie Melton had a point. There wasn't nearly enough going on in Sandham for visitors. "They've got 2 piers at Brighton," he mused. "I know," said Kate. "Lots of hotels?" "Yes." "Plenty of picture houses?" "Indeed." "And more tea rooms than you can shake a stick at. Everything's better in Brighton." "I once went to Bognor," said Winnie, for no apparent reason. "Bognor?" questioned Ernie. "I took my Ethel there once. 7 days and nights. She ended up utterly miserable. Bognor can do that." Kate smiled as best she could. "Are you going along to Wilson's, Mrs. Forbes?" asked Winnie. "A little later, yes." Wilson's Auction Rooms was due to hold a sale of items from a country house on Friday, but pre-auction viewing had already begun. "I was thinking of getting something for my parlour," said Winnie. "It could do with a touch of class." "I'm thinking along the same lines," said Kate. "As am I," said Ernie. Enid Turpin arrived at their table with 2 coffees on a tray. "Ah, lovely," said Jane. "He's a nice old chap," said Enid. Kate glanced from the tray to Ernie Melton, and back to Enid. "Who is?" "Norman West." "Oh, yes, absolutely." "Always telling you where he's been and where he's going next." "Yes, very much so," said Kate. "A friendly presence in Sandham since his arrival?" "Should we be worried?" Jane asked. "Well, it's true. He's not the outdoors type." "He's retired," said Enid. "Worked in the gentleman's outfitters at a department store in London. Very good with people. Kind, well-mannered, always interested in others. The kind of chap you like to help in return." "True," said Kate, recalling the time she made him a winter stew when he was struggling with a heavy cold. On arrival, she found that 6 other ladies had come up with the same idea. "He could be in trouble," said Enid. "I mean, here's us, inside, warm and safe, enjoying hot coffee, and somewhere outside, lost and alone, there's poor Mr. West battling the elements." "We don't know that for certain," said Kate. "He's probably had an accident," said Ernie Melton. "Most likely fallen down, prone, in anguish, broken limbs sort of thing." "We don't know that either," said Kate. "Perhaps you could pop round to his house," said Enid. "I have a spare key, but I don't like to pry." "I'm sure I don't like to pry either," said Kate. Enid smiled hopefully. "Perhaps we could pry together." Kate sighed. "Sergeant Jones is most probably right. Norman will no doubt turn up soon enough. Besides, Jane is with me for a well-earned rest, not to catch her death in the damp." "Oh, but you solved that business at Linton Hall," said Enid. "It's hardly the same thing," said Kate. "Exactly," said Ernie. "Finding Norman shall be a lot easier." Kate thought of throwing Ernie Melton into the street, with a message to go and look himself. But that attractive vision fell away, to be replaced by Enid's troubled visage. "It might be serious, Mrs. Forbes, and he's such a lovely chap. It's not like we'd be poking our noses in where they're not wanted." Kate peered once more through the window to the blustery street. Being by the seaside was beneficial for one's health, and having a tan was no longer associated with manual labour. But not today. She'd either catch pneumonia or go rusty. "How about we think before we leap?" she suggested. "What do we know for certain? For my part, I saw him at the library on Friday afternoon." "I saw him on Saturday morning," said Enid. "He was coming back from the baker's with a small loaf." "He wasn't in church on Sunday," said Winnie Harris from the counter. "I'd have noticed him otherwise." "Me too," said Kate. "Are we saying he disappeared on Sunday morning, then?" asked Winnie. "No, we're saying he was last seen on Saturday," said Jane. "You're forgetting Sunday afternoon," said Ernie Melton. "In what way?" said Kate. "He went for a walk, came right by my window." "Any idea where he was going?" "No, I never poke my nose into other people's business." "I do hope nothing peculiar's happened," said Enid. "I'm sure it's nothing," said Kate, "although I don't suppose it would hurt for someone to take a look." Ernie sniffed. "What rotten weather for you to contend with." "Don't worry about us," said Kate. "It's the sailors at sea we should pray for." "Most apt," said Ernie. "I'm having cod and chips for lunch." Kate found his attempt at humour quite unnecessary. That said, cod and chips for lunch sounded spot on. "Should I get my coat?" Enid wondered. Kate looked forlornly at her coffee, and then apologetically at her niece. "Jane, would you mind if we popped round to Norman's? It's only a 15-minute walk." "Not at all, Aunt. As you say, it's probably nothing." 2. Sandham-on-Sea began life as a 10th-century Saxon settlement, with easy access to the sea and a natural harbour. Fishing as much as agriculture dominated its history. The current town, however, dated mainly from the Georgian and Victorian periods, where a wider array of commercial interests had slowly brought about the decline of the fishing fleet. For Kate, the town's next step was clear: attract more visitors, and all would benefit. "Poor Mr. West," said Enid, as they headed up a largely empty Royal Avenue, home to many small hotels and lodging-houses. "It's such a worry." "At least the rain's stopped," said Kate. "I'm sure, once the weather settles, we'll be inundated with visitors. What do you think, Enid?" "He's never gone missing before." "No, indeed." "Does he ever take trips away from home?" Jane asked. Enid shook her head. "Not without letting his cleaner or me know. It's most unusual." "I'm sure we'll learn something at his house," said Kate. "A note or something," said Jane. "It's possible it was a last-minute thing." "I doubt it," said Enid, as they turned right onto the High Street, which was a little busier than Royal Avenue. "He's not a last-minute kind of man. Very meticulous, he is." It was a brisk walk past the bank, greengrocer's, dairy, fish and chip shop, Mrs. Bailey's combined grocery and post office, the pharmacy, and the solicitor's office, the last of these having been rebuilt after an unfriendly Zeppelin dropped a bomb in 1915. From there, they headed into Chapel Way and along Lowerfield Lane, where one of the turnings was Hedge Place, a pretty tree-lined cul-de-sac. At its far end, just beyond Enid's small cottage, stood Swift House, a large, white stucco-fronted villa with a sizable front garden. There was a sentiment among some that the house was much bigger than one might expect of a man in Norman's situation. Not that it was anyone's business. In Sandham-on-Sea, privacy was a right cherished by all. Of course, that didn't stop gossip. After all, the more private a citizen, the more satisfying it was to speculate about what they might be up to. At the door, Enid turned the key and pushed. "Hello? Mr. West? Are you there?" She turned to Kate and Jane. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if he answered? As it was, no answer came, so they entered. "Let's stick together," said Kate, as she closed the door behind them, "just in case." "In case of what?" said Enid. Kate declined to say. A moment later, they peered into the front parlour, with its marble fireplace, upright sofa, matching armchairs, Persian rug, and walnut coffee table. The only thing it lacked was Norman West. "Lovely paintings," said Jane, referring to 4 summer-themed oils of butterflies, ladybirds, wildflowers, swooping swallows, and so on. "Cheap copies," said Enid. "Mr. West told me he likes nice things, so he buys imitations in London to make the place look nice." "Interesting," said Jane. Kate deduced from her niece's tone that the question of cheap imitations had not been established in Jane's mind. "Let's try the next room," said Enid, heading into the hallway. A moment later, they entered the middle room, where, again, there was no sign of Norman. Next, their search brought them to an alcove that had once been a large cupboard beneath the stairs. It was now a space for the newly installed telephone, quite something in Sandham, where Kate was among the few private individuals to have one. "The notepad's blank," said Enid, taking a peek at the jotter by the telephone. Next came the garden room, which was home to Norman's desk. There was no sign of the usual occupant, though. Unbolting the back door, they stepped outside. The rear garden looked stunning with an array of blooms in the borders. Among them, showy spikes of delphiniums and hollyhocks, bushy white roses and pink peonies. Here they searched behind the larger shrubs at the back and tried the potting shed, without success. "Back inside, then," said Kate, her gaze lifting from the lower windows to the upper. They were soon climbing Norman's creaky stairs to the landing, which boasted 4 bedrooms. "Which is Norman's?" Kate asked. "I've no idea," said Enid, somewhat righteously, "although I suspect it's the front one." Kate led them, although she hesitated at the threshold. If Norman West was no longer on the earthly plane, it would most likely be evidence behind the ajar door, probably 6 feet or so to her right. "Just think," she said, "we spend 1/3 of our lives in bed." She knocked. "Mr. West, it's Mrs. Forbes with Miss Turpin and my niece." There was no reply, so Kate took a breath, braced herself for a shock, and entered. Her eyes veered away from the obvious spot, taking in a wing-back chair, a dressing table, floral curtains, and a small tiled fireplace. Then, with a thumping heart, she turned to the 4-poster bed. "He's not here," she announced, with considerable relief. They tried the other bedrooms, but all were empty, which meant they were soon reconvening by Norman's desk in the garden room. "Now what?" wondered Enid. Kate caught sight of herself in the large mirror over the fireplace. The grey strands in her hair had no intention of abandoning their takeover bid, but a few of those extra pounds below had been vanquished thanks to regular walking. "Perhaps it's time to go through his drawers," she surmised. "I suppose so," said Enid. "It's very private, though, isn't it, a man's desk? Who knows what he might keep?" "Hopefully a clue to his whereabouts," said Kate. "Do we know if he ever married?" Jane asked. "No, he's a confirmed bachelor," said Enid. Kate pulled open the first of 4 drawers and sifted through the contents, which were mainly uninteresting papers. The other 3 drawers were similarly unhelpful. "I'm not sure where that leaves us," she said. Just then, someone rapped on the front door knocker. All turned as one. "I doubt he'd knock," said Kate. "Unless he's lost his key," Jane suggested. They were soon at the door, looking out at a tall man with a bushy grey beard, a straw Panama hat, and horn-rimmed spectacles. A bright orange tie was visible in the gap at the unbuttoned top of his light raincoat. "Oh, good morning," he said, in an upper-class accent. "I'm looking for Norman West." "So are we," said Kate. "I'm Mrs. Forbes, a friend. Unfortunately, Mr. West seems to have vanished." "Ah, that's bad news. I was hoping to have a word." "If you have a calling card, I'll leave it on his desk. I'm sure he'll show up at some point." "No, I'll try again another time, thank you." Kate bade him goodbye and closed the door. "It might be worth compiling a list of those who know him best." "Just one thing before we do," said Jane. She went to the telephone and retrieved the blank notepad. "Yes, there's something here." She took a pencil from her shoulder bag and rubbed lightly over the indentations in the paper. "It says TD Mun 20/C Cottage. If we assume Mun is Monday, he had a 2 o'clock appointment with TD at a cottage." "That might explain why he's not at home, then," said Enid. "Perhaps you could investigate, just to be sure." "We can't," said Kate. "What if it's a clandestine affair?" "Norman's a retired gentleman," said Enid. "He won't be having clandestine affairs." "Even so, I think we've gone too far as it is." "It's just a discreet look, Mrs. Forbes, to make sure he's all right." Kate felt like saying no, but perhaps a quick look into it would allow them all to get back to business as usual. "Very well, just to reassure everyone. Do you know this cottage he's referring to?" Enid frowned. "No, but if you work out who TD is, you could try there." "That settles it," said Kate. "This is absolutely none of our business." A few moments later, at Norman West's front gate, Kate and Jane watched Enid hurry off. She didn't want to leave her sister for too long, in case of a lunchtime rush at the tea rooms. "Well, Jane, what do you make of that?" "Cheap paintings?" "Do you think they're not?" "I'm no expert, but they look pretty good to me." "Well, no matter," said Kate. "Getting involved in other people's affairs is the last thing we need. Besides, I'm sure Norman West will explain the whole thing when he eventually turns up." 3. Situated in Harbour Lane, not far from the quayside, Wilson's Auction Rooms was a relatively recent enterprise. Founded in 1919 by Jack Wilson on his return from the war, it had quickly built a solid reputation. Jack's grandfather had originally run the premises as a ship chandler, serving Sandham's fishing fleet with everything from sailcloth and rope to mops and buckets, but those days were over. Kate warmed to the number of visitors strolling around Wilson's vast businesslike interior. It was the first of 3 preview days, although most sale items had yet to arrive from the rotting, crumbling Brand Hall prior to Friday's sale. She also felt for the Brand family, who had fallen foul of death taxes and debt, causing them to auction everything they owned. Having moved to more modest accommodation in Brighton, the Brands were thinking of demolishing the old pile and selling the land. Something more immediate was troubling Kate, though. Was she being followed? Certainly, Ernie Melton was acting suspiciously. If she turned left at the next display table, would he turn right? Possibly not, as a right turn would lead him to the rear exit. If only, she thought. "I doubt there's anything worthwhile here," she said, loud enough for Ernie to hear. "That's not what you thought earlier," said Jane. "What about that Georgian silver candlestick?" "Jane, keep your voice down. We're being followed." "Surely not." "Yes, do as I do and act normally." Jane stifled a laugh. "Righto, Aunt." "I have my eye on a number of objects. said Kate conspiratorially. "The thing is, to make sure no one suspects." "Not so easy, with Mr. Melton monitoring your every move." At a long display table, Kate picked up an elegant electric lamp with a carved wooden body and a frilly yellow shade. It looked quite new. Ernie Melton moved alongside her, seemingly interested in a small wooden horse statuette. "Mr. Melton, what a surprise! I had no idea you were here. Have you seen anything you like?" "Possibly." Kate looked to her niece, who was now on the other side of the table, examining a brass candlestick holder. Jane smiled at Ernie. "I bet you've got an experienced eye on one or two things," she said. Ernie Melton's face lit up. "Oh yes, Lady Jane, as you rightly say, one or two things. I'm usually quite lucky at auctions." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Unlike the poor Brand family, whose possessions will soon be cast to the four winds." "Oh," said Ernie. "Don't you mean the four winds and your front parlour?" "Not necessarily." Ernie laughed. "Hiding an intention to bid on something, eh? It'll soon become apparent once the auction starts." "Perhaps," said Kate. "Then again, perhaps not." "It's all to do with psychology, Lady Jane," said Ernie, adopting the mantle of an expert. "If I know she's going to bid for something, say that mirror over there, then I take a closer look. And do you know what?" Kate smiled. "You'd see your annoying face." "I'd bid for it during the auction," he explained. "Whereas, if we hide our interest, then a bid by Mrs. Forbes during the auction would be too late for me to investigate the item properly. Do you see?" "Fascinating," said Jane. Kate huffed. "I'm sure Jane understands basic common sense." "It's not common sense, it's psychology," Ernie insisted. "Most people don't even know it's spelt with a silent P." Kate wished Ernie Melton would be silent. "There are some lovely rugs over there, Mr. Melton," Jane advised. "Are there? Thank you. I'll take a look." He duly headed off in the direction indicated. "There's so much to choose from," said Kate, picking up a brass letter rack. "But how much are things really worth? I mean, what should I bid?" No sooner she put it down, a young man with dark brown wavy hair picked it up and showed it to a blonde woman with a stylish Dutch bob haircut. Both were wearing maroon sweaters. "Fliss, what do you think?" "Ooh," she replied. Kate, meanwhile, flagged down a porter carrying a tea chest full of objects wrapped in newspaper. "Is there much more to come?" she asked. "Tons, Mrs. Forbes. You've barely seen a quarter of it." Stepping back to let him by, Kate bumped into a fellow bargain hunter. She turned immediately with an apology on her lips, but the middle-aged, blonde, mustachioed man wearing a stylish charcoal blazer beat her to it. "Sincere apologies," he uttered in a soft, very slight accent that might have been German. "My fault entirely," Kate assured him. "How about some cushions?" Jane suggested. "They've put some out by the front door." "Yes, although there are some nice-looking items at the back." She and Jane were soon at the rear of the premises, where some of the larger objects were waiting to be moved into their final positions. In particular, Kate had a liking for a tall, dark corner cabinet. "What do you think?" she asked. Jane shrugged. "That you don't have room for it." "I might if I move a few things around." "Aunt, you'd have to move things into the street."
"What do you think of him?"
said Ernie Melton, appearing unexpectedly at Kate's elbow.
"Might be a famous champion."
He was tilting his head towards what looked like a seasoned boxer, wedged into a midnight blue suit. He was speaking quietly with an older man, possibly in his 50s,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?